I think attaching your identity to your work, I think it's okay if that is a part of who you are. It represents a big part of your day and your life. Give yourself the space and the grace to go through whatever you're going through and to feel your emotions.
Welcome to the Be Better broadcast. Leaders, today, this episode is for you. We're going to be talking with a very special guest, Rhonda Williams, about how you can create an empowering culture. What is an empowering culture? What is the goal we are striving for as leaders to create a culture amongst our workforce and our team and our organization? And for those who don't know Rhonda Williams is a published author, an international speaker, and an executive coach. Her path from career and personal devastation to emancipation and her commitment to transformational leadership is an inspiring model of invincible optimism for leaders across the globe. Rhonda helps organizations create modern magnetic cultures, broadening and deepening the understanding of executive behavioral constructs and practical self-mastery for modern professionals. We're going to be talking about philosophy today of leadership. We're going to be talking about practical tips that you can use in order to achieve self-mastery as a leader, as an executive, so that you can transfer those same skills, mindsets, and attitudes to your team. When you take away even just one thing from this conversation with Rhonda, all that we ask is you share this show with just one other person who could use this message as well. You are the reason the Be Better broadcast has grown to over 300 episodes, over 100,000 downloads in the last few years, because you are the best part of the Be Better team. So without further ado, let's talk to Rhonda. Rhonda, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
It is such a pleasure to be here with you. I'm really excited for our conversation.
I'm excited too. So full transparency, I don't know a lot about you, Rhonda, aside from the research that I've done, but the reason we met was through a mutual friend of ours, Brett Packard.
Yeah.
And Brett doesn't introduce me to a ton of people. When he does, there's always a really good reason behind it. And for those who don't know who Brett Packard is, we did an episode on the Be Better broadcast almost a year and a half ago on organizational leadership. And this man has the experience. He has the skills. He's done it for decades. And he said, Brandon, you've got to talk to Rhonda and have her on the show. And that's why Rhonda's here. So it's, again, great to have you. And thank you for being on, Rhonda.
Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
So talk to me about this idea and this journey that you've been on. You've described your personal story as a journey from devastation to emancipation. What does that mean? Like, what did that look like in your life that has led you here?
Yeah, so really interesting. I had an incredible time, early in my career, having the opportunity to engage in leadership in healthcare. So, leading healthcare teams as a chief nursing officer and continued to sort of climb and move up the ranks. Had the opportunity to um, lead organizations as a hospital CEO. And so I was continuing to elevate, continuing to grow, with one of my main purposes being to really help the teams deliver high quality care, right, to patients and families that deserved it. Interestingly enough, what I did not see coming was the storm that was on the horizon. So, as I am climbing in this professional path, a storm was brewing, and that storm came in the form of a PR crisis and nightmare that hit my hospital that resulted in national TV exposure and just craziness. Picketers outside my hospital. I mean, it was wild. If I would have written a story, I probably would not have written it that way.
Wow.
In fact, I did write the manuscript about the story, and I just haven't published it yet. So eventually, I'm going to get to that. But it was such a devastating time in my career because there was no manual, Brandon. There was nothing that said, this is how you go through a crisis of this magnitude. So I did what I always do. I handled it in the best way that I could, and keeping our staff in the front view mirror, keeping our patients and families in perspective. We navigated the crisis, and as things started to settle and things started to wind down, we began to get back to a sense of normalcy because this went on for a couple of months. We went back to some normalcy, and my organization decided that someone had to move on after this, and it was me. And so, as the CEO of this organization now, mind you, I had been working at this organization for nearly 18 years. I was devastated. I was absolutely devastated. I don't get into the details about the story because I never want anyone to walk away with, oh, she had no role or she's blaming everyone else. Definitely not doing that. So the details are not important. What is important is this organization that I worked with for nearly 18 years, growing, developing, building a reputation. And it was just over in a flash. That was devastating for me. So I cried a lot and tried to get my bearings and figure out where I needed to go next. And as I did that, coming off the heels of that, then I realized that the person that I was married to, the man I had been married to for 18 years, is not the man I needed to stay married to.
Mm.
And we divorced. So, in a very short period of time, the person that I thought I was not the person that I was anymore.
Yeah.
My entire life changed, and that really left me spinning a bit. So that's why I sort of describe it the way that I do.
Fascinating. There's so many different questions I want to ask you based on that. First thing I'll say is I applaud you for moving through that situation to eventually landing to where you are now and what you do now, impacting leaders across the globe. And I can imagine that if past Rhonda saw current Rhonda, she would be very, very proud of where you are currently. Would you agree with that?
I would agree. I would have had, if you would have told me I would be doing this today, I would have probably just laughed and went, "Oh, Brandon, you're so cute." Right? But had no desire or anything. But something really magical happened during that time. Right? I really had to transform myself. And that was a very intentional process for me. So the first book that I wrote in coming off of my divorce was, you're going to laugh at the title, Are You Out of Your Blank Mind? And it was The Woman's Guide to Successfully Surviving Infidelity. And in that book, I really wrote about how you can come through difficult times and stay true to who you are. And then, even more so, to grow into it, to step into who you are. I distinctly remember sort of being down and like, why is all of this happening to me? Who did I piss off? God, I'm so sorry, right? I didn't mean it, whatever it was I did. And then saying to myself, now, wait a minute, who are you going to be going forward? Because that person's done. Like that's over that phase of your life. So what is it going forward? And it began this sort of metamorphosis in my life. At that point, I literally changed everything about myself. I changed my hair, went to natural hair. I lost 50 pounds. I sold all of my furniture, moved out of the house, moved into a smaller place, and then eventually, in about a year or so, totally left the state and moved all the way to another state. Started my first business, launched a natural product line. So much happened for me, all because I decided that I was no longer, I couldn't afford to sit in the passenger seat of my own life, that I had to get in the driver's seat, take the keys, get behind the wheel again, and decide what my destination was.
That's powerful. Let's talk to those leaders who are navigating through a similar situation, whether that be they are a leader in an organization and they are navigating divorce, or maybe they've lost someone who's very, very close to them, or maybe they've lost their job entirely. And you know this, I've been there as well. We tend to attach a large part of identity, if not most of our identity, to what it is we do professionally, especially in a position that holds much esteem, in a position that allows you to reach and help a lot of different people. Our identity is attached to that. Even this show, my identity is heavily attached to the Be Better broadcast. If it ended, a large part of me would quote unquote end as well. So let's talk about this idea of identity. When you're moving through this time and you're no longer the CEO of the hospital, when you're moving through your divorce and the divorce is finalized, how are you then creating a new identity for yourself? You said things such as you had some health accomplishments, you changed your hair, all those things, which are amazing results. And how did you begin to take those steps? Like, what's the first step to forming a new identity after those events?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And the first step is recognition. The first step to anything is awareness and recognition, right? So it is becoming aware of where you are and who you are, and then really objectively looking at that to say, is this where I want to be? Is this who I want to be? Does this represent who I am? I was so attached to that identity in my work. For those out there in the healthcare field, as a registered nurse, as a physician, you really do become attached to those identities. And I really had to decide, yes, I was this, and I'm a mother, and I've got some creativity, and I'm an innovator, and I am a coach. I've always been a coach. I remember coaching my sister and her boyfriend when I was, I didn't even have a boyfriend yet, and I was coaching my sister and her boyfriend, right, on how to heal and sort of solidify their relationship. So I had to start thinking about all of these things that I am. I think attaching your identity to your work, I think it's okay if that is a part of who you are. It represents a big part of your day and your life, but you're also so much more. And recognizing that and getting real with that allows you to know that you're never stuck because you're not one thing, right? You are a collection of identities, and that's okay.
Yes. And we get the opportunity to choose a lot of the things in which we are, right? We are a mother, we are a father, we are a sibling, we are a son, a daughter, we are generous, kind, we love to contribute. Like, we get to choose the character traits. Like, obviously we all have the roles, but we also get to choose the traits that we want to embody. And if we embody those traits, such as I am invincible, I am able to move through any challenging situation, then we tend to find different solutions and opportunities because of that new trait that we believe in. Is when you were going through this process yourself, I'm assuming that it wasn't just in a 10-minute, 15, 20-minute session that you just sat down and wrote this down. I'm sure it happened a bit over time. Were there specific exercises or things that you did, such as, did you write these things down? Did you talk to somebody about it? Like, what did that process of recognition look like?
Yeah, the first part of the process for me was to get myself re-energized and motivated, right? Coming off of this really difficult time in my life, I found like my butt was dragging a bit, right? And so I had to get a little bit of pep in my step. So I chose a theme song, right? And you can choose anything. Find music, find something that speaks to you in that moment, gets you moving, and that sort of thing. So I found a song to give me energy. I would play it then every day, and it really got my wheels turning. And I'd get a little bit sassy about it and go, okay, so what? That's over now, but watch out, world, because here I come. I didn't know where I was going, had no idea what was next, but I knew that I could figure it out. I knew that I had developed a skill set. I knew I had positioned myself to learn a ton. I had mentors and friends and people who loved and cared for me. And so I knew that I could take the time to start working through that. So I really just started writing down some things. And it just so happened, this was a really interesting way that I just got started. I was at my hairdresser's, and we were talking about things, and lots of information gets exchanged at the hairdresser or the barber shop, if
Yeah.
you all know what I mean. So we were talking, and she started talking about her dream of launching a natural hair line, because I was in that transition now to natural hair. And we talked about it, and I said, well, that sounds fascinating, maybe I'll do that with you, right? Because I'm searching, right? I'm just wanting to reach out and to do something. So I'm like, oh, I'm volunteering, I'll do it. And so she said, well, there's a conference coming up, why don't you go with me? So I go to this conference with her, and blew my world. I just blew my mind. I was just immersed in this world that I knew nothing about. All of these wonderful, healthy, natural products for your skin, for your hair. What was interesting was I found myself moving towards the skin products and not the hair products, and just spending time with them, hanging out with them, testing the products, understanding what went into it. So I went back and I said to her, I said, you know what? Not really feeling the hair thing. It's just not really grabbing me, but I'm all about the skin thing. So I think I'm going to start playing and exploring with doing my own skincare products. It was actually a part of my therapy, Brandon, because what happened was, as I was in my the depths of my professional career and my CNO and my CEO work, I was not really taking very good care of myself. And
Mm.
so, I wasn't taking good care of my skin, just using anything in my hair. And so that was the switch for me that got flipped. So I started playing with these products and toying and tinkering. I don't know how much money I spent, Brendan. I bought all of this stuff, turned my house into a lab. It was quite hilarious. Sort of kidnapped my kids into the process, right? I'm like, you're going to help me with this. You're going to help me develop this process. Here, smell this, check this out. And I ended up coming up with this product that I was just going to use for me and sharing it with some friends and family. They're like, this is amazing. How much? And I'm like, how much? I'm not selling this. This is mine. This is just something that I'm doing. Well, I ended up turning it into the product line. And
Yeah.
I ran the Spoiled Naturally product for about 10 years, ended up in several stores and that sort of thing before I decided that I needed to shut that down because my true passion was really coaching and leading.
Yes. And I can only imagine that the process of you going through that skincare journey with those products, with that business, aligned you up and taught you a lot that is still relevant to the business that you operate today. So I'm guessing you're able to look back and connect those dots, even if at the time it looked like what you were invoking this journey on, it probably looked like it was very different than what it is you do now.
Yeah, it looked very different. So here's an interesting part. I never considered myself really a creative person because I was always in the corporate and professional space, right? And not a ton of creativity sometimes that's happening there, particularly in the healthcare space. And so I never considered myself creative. So I have this product line and I'm speaking to people and I'm saying, well, I'm not very creative. And one person said, okay, stop. You have just created an entire product line. You mix and create your own fragrances. You completely developed the form. What part of that is not creative? And I sat back and went, oh my goodness, it's the story that I'm telling myself. So if I connect that to the work that I do today with coaches and leaders and really helping people to become better masters of self leadership so that they can then impact the cultures in their organizations, it's all about creativity, right?
Mm.
The way that I do that is in a way that's unique to me, right? It's the formulas that I use proprietary methodology that I've created. I tune in and tap into it in a way that leaders enjoy and can resonate with. All of that creativity that I learned through that product development portion, I brought into this work that I do today.
Wow. Isn't that so fascinating how we can sit back and say, I am not creative? And we can say that. And then other people hear us say that and they look around and they're like, Rhonda, what are you talking about? Like, look at what you've done here. Look at what you've done here. And it's fascinating because I'm also someone who, until recent history, I'm talking like the last few years, always said, I'm not creative. And I find that the reason I started telling myself that story was I've been with my wife now for going on 12 years. We've been married for 6 years. And my wife is an incredible artist. Like the drawing she creates, the painting she does, she's absolutely incredible. And I'm over here just making stick figures, like huge contrast. And I would say to myself, I can't draw like that. I'm not creative. But really, what I should have been saying is, I am not creative in the same ways. And I had a friend of mine, Todd Bailey, who actually has been on the podcast as well, who helped me realize that it's not that I'm not creative. Creativity is literally seeping in every single area of my life. And it's wild. And I'm sure it's the same for you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we start to change that story from I'm not creative to creativity is everywhere in my life, you become a whole lot more creative in literally every area of your life. It's almost like you're lifting this rock, this boulder out of the stream of your mind, allowing that stream to continue passing through. It's wild how it works.
Yeah, it's a bit like unleashing a monster, right? I went from, I'm not, but I was doing the same thing. And my connection to, I really resonate with what you're saying right now, because my connection and the reason I have always told myself I'm not creative from the time I was a little girl is because my mom's an incredible artist. Her ability to draw and to paint is just phenomenal. And I could never, I'm like you, right? Stick people, maybe. Like you probably wouldn't even know what I'm trying to draw if I try to draw a stick person. You're like, what is that craziness? But my mom is incredible. So in my brain, I was never creative because I couldn't do what she did.
Yeah.
And but my creativity comes through in an entirely different way. And I now recognize that. And so that is one station that I'm able to turn off now in my head. I can put that to bed and put that to rest, that I'm not creative. My creativity comes through many areas of my life. It's just different. But you know what? That makes total sense since we're all unique beings. That makes total sense.
Yes, 100%. We've talked about a lot in 20 minutes. Just to recap, I mean, we've just unleashed creativity. You gave a profound formula to recreating your identity, and not recreating, but even identifying your identity. And just to recap here, when you were in that stage of your life where you were saying to yourself, who is Rhonda? Who am I? What's next for me? You changed your appearance. You got really serious and focused on your health, right? You said you lost 50 pounds. That's absolutely incredible. You started to do new things like the hairline, which turned into the skincare line. And that wasn't in your wheelhouse at the time, but it became a part of your repertoire and has led you to where you are. You created a theme song. Like you just literally gave 4 to 5 ingredients and steps that people can use right now to shape their identity. And this is so important. And for maybe a leader's listening who's like, Brandon, let's get to the culture stuff. This is the culture stuff. The first step, in my opinion, I'm curious to hear what you think, Rhonda, the first step to transforming a culture is to transform yourself, right? It's hard to change an environment if you yourself stay the same. If you enter this new environment, but you're the same person, it's going to be really hard to shift that environment. So I would like to know, because I'm curious, when you were in this stage as the CEO of a hospital, and through every other difficult situation that you've been in, including now in your business and situations that your clients have been in, these difficult times, these tumultuous times, these times that you couldn't even have wrote yourself back then until it actually happened. How do you maintain what you call invincible optimism? How do you stay strong during those times to make it through?
Yeah, it's such a great question because it's not an easy thing to do. The first thing I want to be really clear about is um, to emote is human, right? To emote is human. So give yourself the space and the grace to go through whatever you're going through and to feel your emotions. Emotions are our greatest source of information. One of my areas of expertise, and I use this as a foundation in the work that I do with leaders and transforming cultures, is emotional intelligence. So, with emotional intelligence, awareness of what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, what you're thinking is really, really important because it gives us information. For instance, let's say I am outside and I see someone drive by in a super cute little red Corvette and they are dressed to the nines. They get out, they look amazing, and there's this twinge of, look at them. They think they're all that. They're showing off. They're a bit boastful. That's telling me something, right? It's okay to have that thought. I'm more curious about what it says and what it means for you. Is there some part of you that wishes that that were you? Is there some aspiration there? Do you think you should be further along on your journey or your career? Do you not feel seen or heard? When we allow ourselves to feel our emotions, then we are able to really connect the dots with what that is telling us. So, emotions are our greatest sources of information. So, that's the first thing, right?
Wow.
Yeah, that's really powerful because when we allow ourselves to feel that, then we can move to the next step. And the next step in the process for me is to sort of create a North Star. Like, where do you want to be? Where are you going? So, what I did is I wrote down some core values, right? My core values are to always be authentic, to be persistent, to go through my obstacles or over them or around them, but knowing that the obstacle is the way, right? We have obstacles and challenges, but it is the way to success. So don't try to avoid those obstacles. Lean in, understand what that's bringing and the magic that's on the other side of that for you. And so, writing down what those core values are for you, they'll be different for you than they are for me, right? I'm also someone who really believes in making sure that I have goals to understand where I'm going. It's fun for me. Knowing that I have something, a target that I'm aiming for, inspires and motivates me to give it my best and to keep going. So write down what your North Star sort of, they can be core values or however you want to frame that. Write those things down and then you begin to build around that. So as I wrote those things down, the one of the first things that I wrote down is I'm not a I'm not a sad person. I'm not a depressed person. Like who is this person? I didn't even recognize myself. That's the first thing that I had to get out of. You need to find happiness where you stand. You need
Mm.
to choose happiness where you stand. Yes, those situations didn't work out in the past, but there are no guarantees in this life. I'm not 10 years old, right? Nobody said, here, this is how it's going to be. It is what it is. And we are, as adults, we're able to handle it, recognize it, and navigate it so we can move forward. So, one of my other core values is to never be stuck. And I encourage this in my executive coaching with all of my clients. I never want to see you stuck in your own life. This is your life. You're making the decisions. Every single day is an opportunity to make a different decision. So, never being stuck is one of those decisions that I think leaders is important for leaders because you might be in a difficult situation, difficult culture, difficult workplace, but nothing will change until you do. So, you be the catalyst and it starts with you and then you can sort of exponentially allow that change to move through the rest of the team and the organization.
Wow, that's amazing. That idea of the North Star is so powerful. And what I really love is in your core values, you didn't just write down who you are and what you want to be. You also wrote down what it is you are not and what
Right.
you don't want to be. Sometimes if we don't have a goal or we don't know which value out of a list of 300 or more values out there we want to adopt, sometimes it's easier to decide who you don't want to be and then the values reveal themselves in that way. And this idea of values, it's always very interesting to me to have this conversation because a lot of experts in this field talk about core values and they all have a different way of going about it. I'm curious to know what your way is when you're navigating through this difficult terrain. And it's one thing to sit down a morning or an afternoon or a couple hours and write down your core values, decide your goals, close the notebook, and get to work. But then when you do confront a challenge or a roadblock, how do you personally remind yourself and keep those core values top of mind for you?
Yeah, so I think everything is like you need a cheat strategy because our brains are simply not prepared to hold on to everything at every moment. So I would type it in my iPhone in my note section. I typed it in my calendar so that it would pop up every single morning. So I even do this today. There's some things that pop up for me every morning as a reminder of who I am, where I'm going, what I hope to achieve, what I'm grateful for. Those things pop up for me every morning. So I don't really have to think much about trying to remember it. It's in front of me every day. I also like to keep things accessible. I like to say out of sight is out of mind. So, what do you have accessible, whether that be the notepad on your phone or your calendar, or maybe you carry around a little notebook or whatever that is, where you can keep some of those important little notes that inspire and motivate and remind you of the journey that you're on. One of the reasons this is essential is because challenges are going to come. It's not if, it's when. That's just how life works. And so when challenges come, what is your toolbox and where is it? What good is the toolbox if you're driving out and you have a flat tire, but you leave all the tools at the house? You have to have your toolbox accessible and with you. And sometimes we're too busy to set up system structures and processes. But it's the systems and structures and processes that set us up for success, right?
Yes.
Not willpower. Let's throw willpower out the window because willpower is like a wacky friend. It waxes and wanes. It's here today, gone tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? Willpower is like so last year. What we need for ongoing success is systems, structures, and processes that leads you to outcomes.
Wow, that I love that because we often hear about systems and processes from a business perspective, but how often do we hear about them from a personal perspective?
Yep.
And for me, like when I really started to make transformational strides in my own life, I was in my early 20s. I'm 29 now. And I went along. It's so funny because that formula for identity earlier that you shared is very akin to my own story. I also lost almost 60 pounds, just very close to 60 pounds when I was 21. I was able to transform my mindset, and a lot of that came down to I also changed my appearance. That was when I shaved my head. That was when I grew a beard, right? I was holding on to this past version of myself, but once I started to change my appearance, create goals forward, really put a focus on my physical health, that's when everything started to change for me. And like you said, I didn't want to go to the gym every single day. Just like when you were on your own health journey, you didn't wake up wanting to do these things. I can imagine during these difficult situations at the hospital, even, you didn't wake up excited to go to work every single day. I can imagine you were thinking while sitting in your bed, even, oh man, another day. I got to deal with more challenges. I got to deal with more headaches, all these different things, right? So these systems and processes, if you're out there and you're thinking, that just sounds boring. That sounds bland. I don't know how to do that on my own. This is why it is so important to have a coach by your side. My personal life didn't transform until I had a coach. It was a coach that I wasn't paying at that time. It was a friend of mine who I was grateful to have in my life as a mentor, who took me under his wing. And he essentially coached me for nothing, but I also worked for the same company as him too. He was my direct leader. But my business didn't transform until I hired a business coach. And it was a large investment. And I was like, am I ready for this? And thank God I pulled the trigger and I figured out how to make it work because it transformed my entire business. So if you don't know how to implement these systems and processes, grab yourself a coach. And if you're resonating with Rhonda right now, Rhonda, you are a coach. And I'm excited to talk about what that looks like specifically for leaders and executives. But let's talk about culture now. Okay. You transformational culture. What does that look like? Is it the same for each organization? Is it different? What is a transformational culture?
Yeah, so a transformation of your culture is really about deciding where are we now and where do we want to be. So it is different for every organization. Some organizations are just trying to transform the way that we communicate with each other. Some organizations are trying to transform the way that we deliver service for our customers and clients and patients. Some organizations might be trying to transform sort of flexibility and the way that we engage with each other in the workspace and our the way that we now integrate a remote team with what used to be always a traditional team, right? So the transformation is very, very different. And one of the things I do as a boutique leadership development organization is I help to identify where organizations are today, and then we identify where they want to be. And that's where we identify the gaps, right? So, okay, so this is where you are today. These things are working for you. Let's talk about these things that are maybe not working for you as well. And is that the goal? And if so, then we can put together a roadmap and a strategy for how we want to get there and transform their culture. At the end of the day, I talk about modern magnetic cultures. Modern magnetic cultures is where leaders and employees want to be. It is where they can thrive. They feel heard, valued, seen, respected, understood, and appreciated, right? So when you are able in today's complex and crazy world to create a culture where people want to be, that is a very, very powerful way that you can gain a competitive edge. And when you have a competitive edge, it is what can support and guide your bottom line. So I think that part is really, really important, understanding the role that your people play. Surprisingly, most people don't really want to be at their organization. That's a sad, sad fact.
Yeah.
But organizations need to pay attention to it, because if your people don't want to be there, then they are doing what they need to do to get by. They are not using much discretionary effort. They're definitely not going above and beyond. They're not very engaged. They're not satisfied. And as a result, you are not getting what you could be getting from them.
Okay, so determine where we are now, determine where we want to go, create what you call a magnetic culture. And what's the full phrase there? Because that was really good.
Modern magnetic culture.
A modern magnetic culture. What's the importance of modern there?
Yeah, so often we try to hold on to the past, right? It's always been this way. This is the way we do it. This works best for us. So understanding that just because something, remember the old phrase, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Terrible phrase. It's a terrible phrase. What it implies is stagnation is good. And we know that that's not the case. Just because something isn't broken doesn't mean it can't be better. Just because something is working doesn't mean that we can't innovate and encourage and empower our team members to think about things a little bit differently. Staying the same means that you are getting left behind. Staying the same makes you Kmart. Staying the same makes you Blockbuster. Nobody has time for that in their organization. Our goals is to get ahead so that we are constantly moving forward.
Yeah. Hey, I used to work at Kmart, so you struck home there when I was 16 during high school. And even while working there, I was like, this place isn't going to last long. I knew nothing about business or organizational culture or anything like that. And you could just look around and you could tell based on people's demeanor, based on the amount of customers coming in, based on the marketing, everything like that. You could tell that, like you said, they were in stagnation. They weren't making movement. So we have a listener comment, and it's, let's speak to the leader who is now, they understand where they are, they understand where they want to go, and now it's time to boots on the ground, make these changes, right? So it's great to seek a modern magnetic culture where everyone wants to go to everyone wants to go to work each day. Everyone feels that they're valued. Everyone feels that there is growth for leadership and new opportunity and all those great things. Although sometimes, while stagnation is a bad thing, stagnation can be safety at the same time. We don't like change as human beings, right? Naturally, we want things to stay the same because change can be scary. So we have a team of people now where it's our responsibility as a leader to guide them towards that North Star, that new modern magnetic culture. How can we go in there and make changes without freaking everyone out, without people saying, ooh, I don't like that change. We're changing too much. This is scary for me. I'm going to go somewhere else, or I'm going to push back on this change. How do we deal with pushback amongst the team when attempting and in the process of changing a culture?
Yeah, so this is an important point. There's a quote, and I can't remember who the author of this quote is, but the quote goes something like this: people don't mind change. People don't resist change. They resist being changed. Right? Critical aspect of any change that you are attempting in your organization. Don't change people. Don't change things around people. Allow the people to be a part of the change. Allow them to drive the change. Allow them to contribute and to participate in the change. Make them the owners of the change. Give them decision making ability to the extent that you can in this change. That's not always possible. A huge challenge leaders have is um, fast versus effective. Most of us are on the side of fast and I just need to get this done. This came down from above. This is sort of where we're going. We got to get it done. Boom. I don't have time to have these conversations and to explain it 85 different ways. Here it is, people. This is what we got to do. We got to move forward. Well, that's not always the most effective. Now, there are always times when this is, so there are no absolutes in leadership. There are times when the directive approach is the best approach, but that's not most times. And we have substituted that as the way that leaders get things done. When I assert that what leaders need to do is to have conversations with people, to find out what the pebble in their shoe is, to find out what they would love about where we're going next, to find out Man, I would be completely on board if what? You need to know that as a leader, because if you do those things, now look, all of a sudden you're not swimming upstream. The resistance to the change is much less because they are telling you how to make the change. It is absolutely incredible and a very powerfully effective tool when we ask questions and we listen to our people, and then we incorporate their feedback and how we move forward in a very overt way. So not to be political here, it's really funny. People say, well, President Obama didn't do anything, right? The big knock on President Obama was that he actually got some things done, but very poorly. He was very poor at communicating what he got done. As a leader, don't have that be you. So if you go out, you ask key questions, you're listening not only with your head, but your heart. What do you feel about what they're saying? Listening with your whole heart and mind. And then you incorporate this feedback, shout it out to the world. Say, as a result of listening, first of all, thank you for all of your feedback because we were able to do X, Y, and Z based on what we heard from you. Last week, we had a town hall and you asked for this. Here's what we're doing. We have to be overt. People are busy. They don't have time to try to figure it out. Are they acting on our suggestions or not? And sometimes they don't know the answer, even when we're trying to do the right thing for them. So, lots of strategies that I use to help leaders create a culture and an environment where people feel heard and recognized. And when they are contributing to the solutions, they feel much more engaged and connected, and there's more buy in.
Such a powerful concept. And it raises the question, how have we navigated away from that in the first place?
Mhm.
And it happened very, very quickly. I mean, it happened 2020 is really when the biggest change happened, when the world went remote. A lot of the world went dark, and then the world went remote. And the ability, I should say, for us to gather a group of people around, the group of people being our team, and ask these questions was eliminated. Everything became virtual. People's cameras are off. People don't want to jump into the conversation. They don't know how because things are on Zoom. Things are different. A lot of change happened all at once. And we got away from this idea of asking great questions of our people, asking them what can be changed, asking them for help in creating the culture that we are moving towards. And I'm curious to hear from you. Is there a unique way or maybe a way that you've helped your clients to open those channels of communication, even in a remote environment, so that those conversations can happen?
Yeah, so I'm so glad that we sort of are on this topic of remote because it's been a real challenge. It's been a real struggle for leaders who were really used to having a team that they could see, right? We started to equate, if I see you, that means you're productive. If I
Hmm.
see you, that means you're working. If I see you, none of those things are true, by the way. But that's what we believe. If I see you, I used to have people when I was working in the hospitals who walked around with a cup of coffee all day. Many of us used to joke that they didn't get any work done. They always had that cup of coffee and they were always in someone else's office. But because we could see them, it felt like they were being productive. And then we took the opposite approach to remote employees. Well, I can't really see you. So I don't know what you're doing. I don't know if you've heard the term I did a video on this a few weeks ago. Productivity paranoia.
No.
Productivity paranoia is something that crept in because leaders feel they can't see you. So now they're concerned about your productivity. Well, leaders, can I just say if you're concerned about your people's productivity, is because you don't have effective measures in place. You don't need to worry about my productivity. What is it I'm supposed to be doing? How are we measuring that? How do we know if that's getting done? Right? If we have effective measures in place, then you know I'm getting my work done and there's no need to worry. Right? And so having people be in front of us should not be the measure. Likewise, it should not be that we take our remote employees and just try to pretend that we're still all in the office. We're not. it's different. The way that you now need to engage with me is different, right? We need to create opportunities for water cooler conversations because they don't exist now. I can't meet you at the coffee machine or in the cafeteria grabbing a glass of water or a beverage. So now, how do I have those impromptu conversations with you? Let me tie this back to a conversation we were having earlier: creativity. Your ability to be creative as a leader has everything to do with how your people engage with you, how they will show up for you, how they produce and deliver for you. Your remote employees are not in the office. They don't want to just be treated like they're in the office employees. They want to be recognized for and valued for the hard work that they're doing. Many of them are working extra hours because they're so afraid that you're going to think that they're not working at all. So, yes, they may stop for a sandwich break with their son or whatever. Is that a problem for you? If they're super productive and hitting all their metrics? I hope not. Right? I don't know why that would be a problem. If when we begin to focus on outcomes and not time, right? Focus on outcomes and not time. Focus on what's getting done and not the number of hours it takes to do it. You transform the way people feel about their work and their opportunities that they have. So, leaders, what I say is if you've got a remote or a hybrid team, you have to start getting creative. Create the water cooler moment, create opportunities for people to engage both online and offline, create opportunities for people to have chat groups and conversations about the movies they watched over the weekend or the bridal shower they attended, or create the opportunities for people to still engage with you because they are on your team. And there's nothing worse than feeling isolated and like you are not valued because you are not in the office.
That is fantastic advice. It's mind blowing how these conversations exist out there for free because if a leader and executive tunes into this, listens to it, applies everything that we've talked about, they will be on the track to a modern magnetic culture. It's no
Yes.
doubt.
Yes.
And for everyone listening, I just want you to imagine if you took this much away from this conversation with Rhonda, imagine what it looks like to work one-on-one with Rhonda, for her to understand your struggles, for her to help guide you to where it is you want to be personally, as well as with your organization. Because Rhonda, you are a coach for executives and leaders. You have your book, which I'd like to talk about in a second here with you. But for everyone listening, you got to go follow Rhonda on LinkedIn right now. Links are in the description to her LinkedIn profile. You're posting practically every single day, and you're not just posting to post. Like, it's, I don't know how you do it. It's amazing content. Like, I was surfing through all your recent posts over the last few weeks, and I was like, this right here is a masterclass in leadership in itself. If all you did was listen to this conversation and follow Rhonda and treat her posts as a masterclass, you are on your way to a modern, magnetic, and powerful culture for you and your team. So I just wanted to applaud you for that. It's incredible seeing what you're putting out into the world for free.
Yeah, thank you so much. I asked myself this question. In fact, I was working on a post just over the weekend that I'll be because I like to do some batching and that sort of thing. And in the post, I asked, "Who are you serving?" And once you decide who you're serving, then think about what do they want from you? What do they need from you? How are you serving them? Is it aligning with your brand? Is your message and tone consistent with something that's really going to uplift and empower them? So, my way of serving, yes, I work with executives one on one and executive coaching for engagements anywhere between 4 months to a year. Yes, I do organizational development coaching. I conduct leadership workshops, full day retreats, trainings, all of that. But in addition to that, I also serve through my YouTube channel, through my LinkedIn channel. I know every organization in the world can't work with me. Well, they could. And frankly, if they wanted to, I'd be super excited about that. But because that's not reality, I still have a goal to serve. That is a part of my core values, right? It's service and service, whether you are paying me or not. And so that's a part of how I do that.
I love all of that. I wanted to ask you about your book on Amazon. It's a Kindle book. It's The UCR Advantage, a simple way to boost emotional intelligence fast. You talked about emotional intelligence being one of the key traits in leadership. What can people expect when they read The UCR Advantage?
What people can expect when they read this book is to clear up what is often the murky waters of emotional intelligence. That's what I call them. I say oftentimes when I start a conversation with organizations around emotional intelligence, people go, "Yep, got our emotions in check. Good, got it. Let's move on now." That's not what emotional intelligence is, and that's not really how you leverage it. So it's such a powerful set of skills in our lives for something that is impacting every decision we make, the way that we think, the way that we believe and understand, the way that we engage, the way we resolve conflicts, the way that we communicate, for something touching nearly every aspect of our lives. Why would we not be talking more about it? And why would we not be using it in a much more effective way? So the UCR Advantage tries to clear up the murky waters to move emotional intelligence from being this soft, fuzzy thing that sounds good and sounds optional to, oh my goodness, this is really powerful and has a role in my life. And here's a simple technique that I can use to tap in and build my emotional intelligence fast.
That's great. Everyone, there's links in the description to go grab your copy of the UCR Advantage, a simple way to boost emotional intelligence fast. It's not going to take up more room on your bookshelf because this is a Kindle exclusive book. You can get it on your phone, your tablet, your laptop, wherever you want to read this book from Rhonda. Rhonda, I can't say it enough. This has been an incredible conversation with you, a very practical conversation that doesn't just come from textbooks, but it comes from your own life, your own experience, and your own accomplishments, as well as your challenges. So thank you for being open, vulnerable, and thank you for sharing things that we can actually use right now in order to make a difference for us and or our organization.
Thank you so much for having me. I like to say that information is not power, right? Information is potential power. It's what you do with the information that actually makes it powerful. So if I've said something here today that is of value and can serve someone, then that I think is mission accomplished.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Rhonda.
Thank you.
This conversation has been raw, real, with tips that you can take right now in order to reshape your identity after a difficult crisis that you face personally or professionally, with practical strategies and how you can invoke change in your culture without just coming in and attempting to change the people in the culture. Rather than change them, invite them to help you to transform this culture into what Rhonda calls a modern magnetic culture, a culture where people want to be, a culture people are excited to come to work for, and a culture that invokes growth among the people on your team. There's been a lot that we went over. I hope you took away even just one thing from this conversation. Be sure to go follow Rhonda with the description in the links in the description below. You can find her LinkedIn, her YouTube. We'll have the copy to go grab her book, The UCR Advantage, a simple way to boost emotional intelligence fast. If you did take away even just one thing from this conversation, please share this show with just one other person who could use it as well. You are the best part of the Be Better team, and we are grateful to you. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until we talk again next time, continue to be better.